Good morning, Idaho. Hope you're having a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're listening to this. Welcome to the Local Yokel Idaho podcast, where we talk about what is going on in the wonderful state of Idaho. This week, Idaho's fall season is coming into full swing. We have some stories about a scenic drive through Idaho. Nampa looking for a Christmas tree. I know, very, very early. It should wait until after Thanksgiving, but still a story that I think you need to hear about. Plus, we'll be talking about the craters of the moon, which is being mapped using drones. And finally, we'll take a look at some photos of smoke at the Idaho National Laboratory that has sparked some concerns. Hey, glad to have you here today. Please join me for the morning banter where I chat with you guys a little bit before we get into it. But if you're short on time and prefer to skip the banter, I totally understand. You can use the timestamp that's over in the description to jump straight over to the stories. For those that stayed, welcome. Glad to have you here today. This last week, the podcast has done quite well. I mean, I just jumped straight up to there. My goodness. But no, it's actually done very well. It's grown over the last week or two. I think a bit of credit goes there to John for the added editing and effects and different things that now the podcast is like in a video form on all the platforms we post to, or support video anyways. So thank you for all you that are listening out there. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Hopefully it's helping you to know more about Idaho and get involved in your local communities around the state. With that said, also hope you had a wonderful week. I most certainly did. Well, a busy one to say the least as well. I think I had something almost every evening this last week. It was crazy. And so what ended up happening is, like, over the weekend, I had to write the script for this in just under a day. I was sitting there and I spent, it was a bit maddening because I didn't have any time. Usually with the full-time job now, I'll go do the research and the writing and the everything for this podcast in the evenings after I get off work, or maybe in the morning if I feel, energized enough to get up at 6 a.m., I will go through and do the research. But since I was so busy this last week with things each evening, because Tuesday was the Canyon County Central Committee meeting for the Republican Party, and so I went to that. And then I had a job on Wednesday that, money's good, especially for the podcast and everyone in general. And then Thursday, there was a classical music performance. So there was a gentleman that he has traveled all over the world and is just a really great pianist. I think he said he'd been in Cuba 6 times. He's been over in China, all over Asia and Europe and America, and he travels around the world playing piano. But part of his playing his piano is that he is a Christian and that he has his concerts all for free. The one stipulation when he does do them is that the venue or places he goes, they have to allow him to give his testimony of how he came to the Lord, which personally, as a Christian, hearing his was very, very interesting and very moving. I know I took my sister with me on that, and she really, really enjoyed it, and I got to meet him after because he had a table up front, and we chatted with him. Really, really great gentleman. I'm blanking his name right now, but that's probably because it's early in the morning here. If someone really wants to know, shoot me a tweet or email or whatever. But anywho, he was going around the valley all this last week. I think he might also be doing Monday of this week, playing concerts that are all free, where you're able to go in, and he did a really interesting job because I've listened to other classical music stuff. I've been to the Morrison Center and NNU's performances and stuff, and one of the things I found interesting that he did is he only went through about 3 different, I want to say sets or I can't remember the word for the life of me in classical music, but I'll just go with songs. And he before each one of them, he would go and unpack, okay, who's the person, right? Which we're all kind of used to that. And then unpack the history of that exact song, of how the composer came to that and the story behind it. And then the story also between each one of the sections within the song, because most classical music, it's you have segments to them and different chapters to them. I think that's partly a transition from plays and stuff that influence there, but don't quote me on that. But it was really interesting to see that insight, and it really helped me, even as someone who does, I would say, very much enjoy classical music, even enjoy it more because of him describing the imagery and the history and the emotions and feelings that were going into the music when it was made. Anyway, that was Thursday. That was great. Did a hike on Friday with the Young Republicans, and that was really great. We went over there to Jump Creek, which you haven't been. You should. It's awesome. And then Friday, there was a conference I had. That was awesome. Also just busy. And then I had to scramble after that to write the script. So it has definitely been a very, very busy week, to say the least. But I'm here. we're recording, we're getting these stories, and I'm thankful that the Lord actually blessed it. That when I was writing the script, some weeks I get in here and I find so many stories, and it's just like, oh, there's that one's really good, and I don't know, maybe this one, and then there's stories that are really hard to research because there's like maybe political biases and stuff, and so I'm like, okay, well, I got to find that story, and then I got to cross-check it with that, and then I got to figure out how to summarize that and graph this and that, and it takes a lot more work. Thankfully, this week was actually a little bit of a slower one. Anywho, let's get into the news here. Starting off with our first news story, Amano makes New York Times restaurant list. This comes by KTVB7 by Shira Mendez. Some of you may remember when we talked about Amano a couple weeks back when they almost won the James Beard Award, but were beaten by a restaurant in Boise. Well, they may have lost the James Beard Award, but they're making up for it. Amano restaurant in Caldwell, Idaho has been named one of the, quote, America's best restaurants, end quote, by the New York Times. It is the only restaurant from Idaho to make the national list. The head chef, Salvador Alamilla, hopefully I got your name right, is a Mexican immigrant who came to the United States with his parents at the age of 5. He grew up in Southern California and moved to Idaho 15 years ago, so he's pretty acclimatized to the culture here, where he met his wife and had 3 children. Alamilla dreamed of opening a restaurant that would serve authentic Mexican food made with love and by hand. He named the restaurant Amano, which means by hand in Spanish. His journey was not easy. He started out washing dishes in a restaurant and worked his way up to the kitchen. He faced many challenges along the way, but he never gave up. In 2019, Alamilla and his wife opened Amano. The restaurant quickly became a favorite among locals and visitors alike. Alamilla's food is praised for its freshness, authenticness, and delicious flavors. As I mentioned, in addition to being named one of the best restaurants in America by the New York Times, Alamilla was also a finalist for the James Beard Award in 2023. Alamilla's story is an inspiration for those who dream to pursue their passions. He is proof that anything is possible if you work hard and never give up on what the Lord has called you to. Which I keep hearing again and again about this restaurant, and I just have not been. I've walked past it several times. I've seen it, the outside. I think they did a wonderful job. It's like this nice rustic brick outside that they've done a good job of keeping up. I definitely need to go. If there's someone that has been, please let me know. From what I've heard from people, the food is very, very good, but to be expected with high-end dining or dining such that gets these type of awards, shall we say. The price to quantity ratio is not high. I've heard the food tastes amazing and the presentation is amazing, but sometimes that presentation is given at the sacrifice of the quantity of food that you're getting, that like you get it and you really enjoy it, and then you walk out and you're like, I really wish I had more food. I don't know if that's kind of a marketing or thing on their part to bring you back again, or if that's just, you know, the nature of fine dining. I have not done nearly enough of going to nice restaurants to tell you that, if that's the case or not, but I definitely need to drop by. If there's someone that has been to it, please let me know. And if you didn't know about, well, I guess now you do. You should probably drop by downtown Caldwell and check them out. And then if you guys are curious, do tweet me about it, but I'll try to find the name of the place in Boise that won the James Beard Award for the Pacific Northwest. I think that was also, no, it was an Asian gentleman that won that one. I don't know if the food he makes is Asian or if it's also kind of like that Mexican cuisine. I'm not sure. I don't remember off the top of my head. But definitely also something to check out if we're talking on the award area, because it seems like Idaho lately has been getting a lot of great restaurant awards, which I do not have any issue with. Moving into our next one, and kind of related to food, Costco expands in Boise. This comes by the Boise Dev by Donde. So one of the stores you're most likely to see a big homeschool family, or a Mormon family to say the least, is Costco. It is planning to expand in Boise. They're planning to do it at the Cole Road location. The expansion will focus on the western side of the store and will include 2 new large cooler areas and a reconfiguration of much of the bakery, produce, and frozen good areas. The existing walk-in produce cooler and separate dairy goods cooler will be torn out. The new produce cooler will be located in a building expansion behind the current cooler. The older cooler will be backfilled with additional sales racks. The dairy cooler space will be replaced by an expansion of the deli area. The 2 existing freezer cases area will be removed and replaced with 3 new similar freezer cases. And then the dairy cooler will be relocated to a, quote, bump out, end quote, on the north side of the building. The project will add a total of 4,500 square feet to the store, but will require removing 17 parking spaces. The city of Boise will make an administrative decision on the plans. The expansion is good news for Costco shoppers who enjoy the store's produce, dairy, and frozen good offerings. The new cooler areas will provide more spaces for these items, and the reconfiguration of the store will make it easier for shoppers to find what they need. Which Costco is one of those places, it's almost like a cult following. It's kind of like Chick-fil-A, that you're either in or you're not. I mean, that's also probably due to the membership side of it, that they kind of build that in and out thing. I know one thing that I used to go to Costco for a lot for was fuel, because they hands down probably have some of the cheapest fuel regularly in the valley that you just can't beat. I used to always fill up there because it's close to my work and different stuff. But in recent years, I've kind of stopped going there, not actually because of anything of Costco's say, shall we say, but I've actually been experimenting, and this is a completely side ramble discussion. I've been experimenting with just using complete non-ethanol fuel in my daily driving and stuff, and I just wanted to see. I know it's more expensive. Yes, everyone I know says that, but I just wanted to try to experiment and see if, because some people say, the non-ethanol burns cleaner, so you'll spend less on fuel because you'll burn more fuel because the car will run more efficient and all sorts of different stuff. I've heard other people that, some misconceptions I guess I've heard when I've talked to people about this is like that non-ethanol fuel has a higher octane. No, I mean, some pumps can have high octane on ethanol, but you can have it in any grade. I usually get it like the Mavericks because they pretty consistently have it available and it's pretty convenient to get. But in any case, my experiments with it have actually been good, and I've kind of been staying with it because before on standard like ethanol fuel, I was getting because I have like a Corolla, probably like 34, 33 miles to the gallon on average, and that's doing a lot of freeway driving and commuting and, podcast stuff and traveling around talking to people. But with the non-ethanol fuel, I'm just at about like 36.9. I really want to tip it over and get 37. So I think that's like a 5 mile per gallon gain on efficiency. And also I feel like, now this is totally subjective. I have not gone and tried to like test it or drag race or something like this at all for all the car nerds out there. But I feel like it also has a little bit more power and it just runs a little bit more smoothly. I might be wrong. I know it's a little bit more expensive, but usually non-ethanol is about the same as premium. And if, I've heard many a person that can just do just fine filling up, and it is more pricey, but can do just fine filling up on premium fuel, and you can pay the bills still. But I just kind of like taking care of my engine and it running well, so I've been experimenting. Anyway, coming back to Costco. I think this will be cool. I remember the one in Boise. I'm guessing they're going to be going out to the west half of it because they have that like field there that's behind the car wash and stuff. But it sounds like they're actually going to be coming out more to the north, kind of that area where they there's an area they have there. What is it called? It's like it's almost like a garden center. Like half the year they don't even use it for stuff, but it is there. I'm wondering if they're going to put that there and expand out. I know for people who love Costco, they're probably going to be very excited about the bakery possibly expanding. And plus having more freezer space hopefully will allow for Costco to have some more interesting freezer-related things because they're really, really good at that. I think like my mother regularly gets the big frozen chicken packs. And they're great. The quality is great. They've always been great. And I would highly recommend them if you're looking for a decent chicken option out there, including the rotisserie chickens. I think most people that go to Costco or have friends know their rotisserie chickens are just awesome. So amazing as well. But definitely something I wanted to share. And I know a lot of people in Idaho care about because I know a lot of you guys go to Costco, including myself at times. Now, moving from the economic and the food things and moving to the moon, or craters at least, our next story is Craters of the Moon and Drone Mapping. This comes by the East Idaho News by Idaho State University. So this story ties a little bit into what I went to school for, drones, and a bit of mapping. To be specific, 2 Idaho State University professors are using Idaho's volcanoes to learn more about the moon and Mars. Shanna Cobbs Nowotniak, hopefully I got that last name right, and Donna Del Parte are professors of geoscience, and they are leading a team of researchers who are studying the volcanoes in eastern Idaho to learn more about their otherworldly counterparts. The researchers are using a variety of techniques to study the volcanoes. They're using field equipment to measure the temperatures, composition, and other properties of the lava flows. They're also using unmanned aerial aircraft systems, or UAS, to take high-resolution images and create 3D scans of the volcanoes. This data is helping them to create a detailed understanding of the volcano's construction and history. Cobbs Nowotniak says this work will help in future explorations of the moon and Mars. By understanding the processes that formed and shaped these volcanoes, the researchers can develop better strategies for exploring and exploiting their resources. Additionally, the research could help identify potential hazards that astronauts could face on future missions to these planets. Also, in addition to practical applications, the research is also helping to advance our understanding of the universe. By studying volcanoes on the Earth, the researchers can learn more about the processes that create and shape volcanoes throughout the cosmos. This knowledge could help us to understand better the formation and development of planets and other celestial bodies. Cobbs Nowotniak's research is funded by a nearly $750,000 grant from the Idaho NASA Establishment Program to stimulate competitive research. The grant will support the work of 3 graduate students and several undergraduate students in the project. All that to say, it's still in the early stages, but it has the potential to make significant contributions to our understanding of volcanoes on the Earth and beyond. Cobbs Nowotniak and her team are excited to continue their work, and they hope that their findings will help to pave the way for future explorations of the moon and Mars, which I'm super excited to see that they're doing this. I know the photo that I saw, they used a fixed-wing drone, which within the drone world, a little context there, you've got kind of, I think, like 3 platforms. So you kind of got a VTOL platform, you've got a quad or some drone that uses, propellers to lift itself. And then the fixed-wing drones are ones that we're all kind of familiar with, like RC planes are kind of an example of that. That there's a wing and there's either a motor in the back or the front or on the wings pulling or pushing air across the ailerons. Those, it's actually interesting. You kind of choose which one you need for the thing. The VTOL ones, fixed-wing drones are the most efficient for long distances. You can put a battery in a fixed-wing drone, and it can fly for hours and hours and hours because it doesn't have to run up the engine to full power or constantly have the engine running to fly because it's got this wing surface that's keeping it afloat, rather than quadcopters, which we're all familiar with. They can't fly nearly as long. Maybe the max I think DJI has is like a 47, 42-minute flight time on some of the really nice drones, which is still a decent amount of flight time, but it's not nearly what a fixed wing can do. But those quadcopters can be way more precise and way more exact in the way they fly than a fixed wing. And then those VTOLs that I talked about, they kind of combine the two a little bit. So if you're doing package delivery and you kind of need to hover and stop to drop the package off, you can use the VTOL capability. And then if you need to get back to the plant or wherever your delivery or pickup zone is, then you can use the fixed wing element to kind of get back. Anywho, it looks like they're using a fixed wing drone for this, which makes sense because of the large area they're trying to cover in time. Granted, I don't know if they're using like ground penetrating LiDAR to do this to kind of see in, or if they're scanning the topography and then they can have data to like extrapolate how that all works. It seems like a really exciting or interesting idea, especially like here in Idaho where we have the craters of the moon, which is like a crazy example on Earth that's so similar to the moon. They, I think, used it to like practice for the moon landings in the Apollo missions. But I think really cool to take some of these more modern technologies and apply them to try to discover more things. I also did not know at all that Idaho and NASA had like this joint stimulus program or whatever. There again, another thing, federal government doing money again. We can call that what we want to call it, shall we say. But it will be cool to see, and I hope some of this data, especially since it's coming from taxpayer funding a bit, will be allowed to be public, that you can kind of see these data and different things, because I know when they get it all scanned and stuff, it'll be able to like have 3D models that you can almost have that you can move around, and they'll be down to like the centimeter depending on the LiDAR or the altitude of different things. But really, really cool stuff happening out there at the Craters of the Moon, and specifically in eastern Idaho. And then coming to our last story, and I try to save this as the fun story, Scenic Fall Drives in Idaho and other states. This comes by the Eastern Idaho News by Forrest Brown. This last week, Eastern Idaho News released a list of some amazing road trips to take this fall throughout the U.S., of which there are many, from a trip throughout northern Michigan with tunnels of trees, Alabama with its colors, and New Mexico's culture. But because this is a podcast about Idaho. I'm going to focus on the one that is here in the amazing state of Idaho. It is one you can do without committing to traveling far from home, yet getting out of the house to see some amazing fall colors. The scenic drive in question is the Salmon River Byway. It is a 106-mile long route that follows the Salmon River throughout Salmon and Chalice National Forest. It is one of the most remote and scenic drives in the country, and it is a great place to see fall colors. The byway winds through rugged mountains, lush valleys, and scenic canyons. Along the way, you'll see waterfalls, hot springs, and plenty of wildlife, including moose, elk, and bears. The best time to visit the Salmon River Scenic Byway for fall foliage is typically late September to early October. However, it is important to check the fall foliage forecast before you go, as the timing can vary from year to year. Some of the things you can see and should be aware of along the Salmon River Byway are the following. Sacagawea Interpretive Culture and Education Center. There you can learn about the original inhabitants of the region. Next is the Land of Fork State Park. There you can visit the ghost towns of Custer, Bayhorse, and Bonanza, plus soak in the Chalice Hot Springs on the banks of the Salmon River. And then lastly, and many of us know about this, the Redfish Lake. There you can go hiking, fishing, or swimming in the largest lake in the Sawtooth National Recreational Area, which I know I've heard a ton of people go over there to Salmon and Redfish Lake to do their summer camping and stuff, especially here from Boise. I don't know about how it happens over there in eastern Idaho, if you guys are just bored of it and you like to come the other way. I got no idea. Either way works, but I've heard a lot of people say it's really, really pretty, but I have not gone for one reason, which is I have heard that it just gets really, really busy over there. I don't know if it calms down into the fall season or if it ramps up. I also know that like some of the most heavily, the most heavily booked campsites in the United States are like there over in eastern Idaho, not in the Yellowstone area, but like on our side in relation to Yellowstone that are booked the most. I think I remember reading that it was like because of the limited amount of stalls and because of the view, that like if there was more openings and reservations, it probably wouldn't be as bad and as high of a demand, but because there's only like 10 or something in a given area, then it really has created a high demand. I don't know. I know I need to go over there at some point. I am guilty that I've traveled all over Idaho, but the one area I haven't not been in Idaho a ton is eastern Idaho. I've been almost all the way. I think I've been up to Sandpoint, almost all the way to the border up there up north, and I've been at McCall many a times, and Lewiston, and especially here in the valley, in the Treasure Valley area, and then a little bit south of here. But eastern Idaho, I've not been in a ton, especially over on that side by Chalice and the like Salmon River area and the Sawtooth Mountain stuff. Actually, I have gone hiking a couple times in the Sawtooth, so I need to get over there, but it sounds like a really pretty thing, and maybe I'll do that for this fall. I'm not sure yet if that'll work out. I'm planning a different trip that I might end up doing with the grandparents that's up there in Lewiston, but definitely something you guys should look into if you haven't planned on doing any trips, or a little sad that you weren't able to get a vacation in this year because you had a really busy summer. Well, look at this. You got a little bit of a fall treat that isn't too far away that you can go enjoy with all the beautiful colors here in Idaho. Moving into our quickies, these are stories that weren't worth a full coverage, but I felt that you guys still needed to know about. The first one here is Nampa Senior Apartment Makes Deal to Keep Rents Low. This comes out of the Boise Deb by Margaret Carmel. So over in Nampa, a safe harbor for low-income seniors in downtown Nampa, Idaho is staying put just under new ownership. Earlier this month, a nonprofit LEAP, L-E-A-P Housing closed a deal with the Nampa Christian Housing, Inc. to purchase the Golden Glow Tower on 7th Street. This purchase will allow the current 64 apartments to continue to serve as an affordable housing instead of allowing the tower to be sold on the private market. The tenants in the 7-story building are paying as low as $375 per month, including utilities. The deal will keep rents roughly the same and not displace any residents. The key part of the LEAPS deal is to preserve the Golden Tower-involved housing vouchers funded by HUD. The housing vouchers allow low-income tenants to pay 30% of their income as rent. and then funding directly from HUD or through housing authorities will cover the difference. This allows the buildings to offer affordable rents to extremely low-income residents, while also picking up the extra revenue to cover costs in a building for repairs and upkeep. The financing for the project came from layering 2 loans from specialized nonprofit community development financial institutions together. These funds are specifically geared toward funding mission-driven projects like affordable housing developments for organizations like LEAP. Next one is just a brief one here. First death by West Nile virus in Gooding County. This comes by KTVB7 by staff. So I've been sharing the news on this for the last couple of weeks, but sadly someone has passed away due to West Nile virus in Idaho. A Gooding County woman over the age of 50 has died from West Nile virus. This came on the heels of a 50-year-old man dying from the virus last Wednesday. For those that haven't heard the past segments on the topic, West Nile virus is a mosquito-borne illness that causes serious health problems, including fever, headaches, muscle aches, and rashes. In some cases, it can also lead to more serious problems such as encephalitis, meningitis, and in this case, death. In the next one here, and kind of a little funny, and I teased it earlier, Nampa looking for a Christmas tree donation. This comes by KTVB7 by staff. I know it's only September, and it will be October before the next episode comes out, but the city of Nampa is trying to get ahead of the ball here and is looking for donors for the Nampa Christmas tree. The city of Nampa's Parks and Forestry Division is looking for tree donors for the downtown Nampa Christmas tree display for 2023. To qualify, the tree must be at least 40 feet tall, be in Nampa, blue or green spruce, and be easily accessible. Trees cannot be located on a backyard, and the shape and fullness of the tree will be a factor. The deadline is Friday, October 6th for your submission. The winning tree will be removed by the city, decorated and displayed in downtown Nampa. Mayor Debbie Kling will light the tree at a ceremony on November 5th at 6 p.m., and during the event, the city will divulge the tree's backstory. The city will also ground down the existing stump after removal, and once the holiday is over, the tree will be mulched and used at local parks in Nampa. If you have a tree that meets the requirements and are interested in submitting it, people can call the Nampa Parks Department at 208-468-5890 to submit their request. Then going up north to Sandpoint, we have the Northwest Passage Bridge in Sandpoint opens. This comes by the Donner County Daily Bee by Caroline Lobsinger. We hear all the time about how bridges around the U.S. are in desperate need of repair and replacement. Well, up in Sandpoint, a new bridge was just built. The new Southwest Passage Bridge at the Schweizer Mountain Resort is the first project to be completed under Governor Brad Little's leading Idaho local bridge program. The $998,751 bridge is a key link in the resort's infrastructure and provides access to parking, businesses, and more than 300 residents. The previous bridge was in poor condition and had to be replaced before the upcoming skiing season. The new bridge was built using geosynthetic reinforced soil amendments and prefabricated bridge constructions. This allowed for an accelerated construction schedule, allowing the bridge to be built in just 2.5 months. Whoa. The Northwest Passage Bridge is a great example of how, in America, we can still build things in a quick and efficient manner. Lord willing, the bridge will benefit Schweizer Mountain Resort and the surrounding community for many years to come. Next, in coming back to the Treasure Valley Outlet Mall being considered for teardown. This comes by the Boise Dev by Donde. The Boise Factory Outlet Mall has seen a significant decline in recent years, with most of the spaces empty or filled with non-retail businesses. Only Eddie Bauer's remains in the mall, so some are eyeing it for new ideas and developments. One of the main ideas being considered by the developer is to tear down the mall and replace it with a new Kenworth's truck dealership. The preliminary plan submitted to the city shows a large 80,000 square foot dealership building in the middle of the 22-acre site with room for future additions. The rest of the site would largely be paved as it is now, with truck sales displays areas, drop-off locations, parking, trailer parking, and more. Including that option and others would involve the demolition of the existing mall. The Kenworth truck dealership would be a major commercial development, while some of the other ideas would be smaller and more convenience-oriented businesses. The Kenworth truck dealership would create more jobs and generate more tax revenue for the city than the others being talked about. However, it would have a greater impact on traffic and noise levels in the area. Ultimately, the decision of what to do with the Boise Factory Outlet Mall is up to the developer and the city of Boise, so we're watching and waiting to see what will end up happening. Next is a little bit more sport-related and not business. Another pickleball court comes to Pocatello. This comes by East Idaho News by Logan Ramsey. The sport that has been taking over the country in recent years is getting another court in Pocatello. Construction on Pocatello's pickleball complex in Lower Rose Park began at the beginning of last week. When completed, it will be fenced in and have 7 courts with 4 courts parallel to each other and 3 courts next to those, all lit by LED lights. For those like myself who don't know hardly anything about it, pickleball is like tennis mixed with ping pong. 2 or 4 players hit a hollow plastic ball until one side is unable to return it. The net is 34 inches high. The court is 44 feet long and 20 feet wide. For comparison, a tennis court is 78 feet in length and 36 feet wide. The city completed its bid process on September 13th, so they now have the contractors to complete the fencing, surfacing, and lighting. Once the city street department has filled the complex with asphalt, the surface will be completed and it will be fenced in and lit. All the funds for the project came from the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, so any leftover funds from the courts will be reallocated to other approved city projects. Next, and our second to last one here, and the one I also teased about earlier, photos of smoke at Nile spark worries. This comes by East Idaho News by Caitlin Hart. So over this last week, some people got worried because of some photos of clouds of steam at the Idaho National Laboratory, or INL. INL has confirmed that there was no emergency and it was not an unusual occurrence. As many of you know, nuclear reactors contain and control nuclear chain reactions that produce heat through physical processes called fusion. The heat is then used to make steam that spins a turbine to create electricity. The steam cloud was likely caused by the release of excessive steam from one of INL's reactors. This is normal and safe operating procedures. While it is understandable why people might have been a bit alarmed about the photos, there's no need to be concerned. INL is safe and a well-run facility that has had a long history and track record of operating safely. And coming to our last quickie here and wrapping us up, we have East Idaho Elementary School gets national recognition. This comes with the East Idaho News by Carly Flandro. For many, including myself, we sometimes wring our hands about the state of education in America, but with homeschooling growing and parents getting more involved, there is hope on the horizon, especially after hearing this recent report out of the Teton County Elementary School and Fairmont County Joint District, which has been named a National Blue Ribbon School. Teton Elementary is the only Idaho school to receive the prestigious award in 2023. It was recognized for being a, quote, exemplary, high-performing, end quote, school, and for its progress in closing assessment achievement gaps. The National Blue Ribbon School Award is given to schools that demonstrate academic excellence and build positive school cultures that support students of all backgrounds to thrive academically, socially, and emotionally. With that said, I'm not 100% sure of how they judge those last ones, but it is very nice to hear that some schools are still trying to improve and not stay with the status quo. With that said, we come to the end of the podcast. I know, very, very sad. Thank you for listening to the entire podcast. I sincerely hope you found it enjoyable and valuable. If I missed any important points or provided incorrect information, please feel free to reach out to me via email at localyocalidaho2022@gmail.com or on Twitter by tweeting me at localyocalidaho. With the small team we have, we're not able to cover everything, but we do our best to cover the most interesting and important stories. Thank you for your continued support and assistance. That's all for now, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Godspeed.